everyone, my name is Miss Reasso, and I'm going to be walking you through some helpful hints for Mat 152 Lab on sections 7.1 through 7.3. Again, as always, we have our objectives listed here first and our directions. So please complete your work on this paper or insert your work into this document. Type labs are not going to be accepted and will result in a grade of 0. All answers must be handwritten. Other than your notes, calculator, or reaching out to your instructor, you should not be receiving help from other people, electronics, tutors, apps on this lab. Failure to complete the questions with the method as directed will receive no credit for those questions, so keep that in mind. We want to make sure that you are utilizing your calculator for this lab. So there is a whole document in Blackboard that shows good and bad examples of how to complete this lab fully. Be sure to double check that, and we're going to walk through some of that as well here. So the first thing we want to make sure that we do is that we label our normal curves appropriately and shade the appropriate area. So we want to make sure we are labeling our mean, which will be in the middle of our curve, and then our value that we care about for x, and then shading to the left or to the right or in between two numbers. Okay. So that will not occur for 1B and 2B because those are going to focus on sample data as opposed to population data. You are welcome to do a Z transformation if you would like. If you do choose to do a Z transformation, please be sure to show the calculations for that. And for this lab, we want you to use the TI-84 built-in distribution functions to calculate your probabilities from Z or X values, and then same but flipped, a different function for the calculating the Z values from probabilities. Okay, those can be found under second vars, so just be sure to look at your notes for those instructions, and you can also ask your instructor for help if you're having issues with your calculator. Keep in mind, you must write out which distribution function you are using from that menu when you go to second vars, and you need to make sure you're also stating the inputs that you typed in for your work. When you're giving your answers, your probability should be rounded to 4 decimal places and converted to percentages if asked. And any z-scores or x values should be rounded to 2 decimal places. Be sure to use your appropriate units and make sure you fill in your blanks. So what we have here first is our US population. So keep in mind these values when we're talking about the US being normally distributed, these are from the entire population. Now this table here is from the sample data, the survey. Again, your numbers will be different because it is data from a different section or from a different semester. So these will be for 1B and 2B. You'll be using these. Okay. So let's look at how some of these problems are set up. On these problems, you'll be given a curve. Remember, your mean will go in the middle, specifically your mu. And then you are trying to find where an x value may or may not fall and which direction you're shading. So for example, I know this says 60 here. So that might fall below your mean. And if you're looking for taller than, you might be shading to the right. Less than, you might be shading to the left. Just be sure to read whatever your problem says because it could be very different. Now that's just an example. I don't know. I didn't check to see what the mean was up there, but you'll want to label your mean with the value. And you'll also want to put whatever your x value or values are as the numbers. So make sure you put the numbers and then whatever direction you are shading, be sure to shade those in as well, right? Because here it has our x. We want to make sure we're using x values. Okay. So again, that's just kind of an example of what it might look like. Yours could be very different based off the numbers. So you're going to find what that probability is of that shaded area. I know I erased it, but that's what you're going to find. So this answer is going to be your probability. This should be the 4 decimal places. And then you're going to convert that probability to a percentage with no decimals, because we are then going to compare the population to our sample. Okay. Don't forget to show all your work here for how you are getting this probability. Again, you should be using your calculator to do that. Now, part B wants you to look at the frequency distribution, that table, and you're going to count your frequencies of those, however many total you have for yours. And you're going to see how many of those were taller than whatever number or shorter than whatever number. And then you will find what that is as a percent, and then compare the sample to the population. What is the difference between these two numbers? And is the Rowan-Cabarrus above or below that value? Okay. And this is pretty much the same thing, except you're looking possibly between two numbers. So very similar. I'm going to fix the spacing here, so don't worry. After 2B, we're just solely looking at the US population. So you might be finding percentages, or you might be finding how many. So number 4 here is talking about how many women would be either shorter or taller than whatever you're given. So you'll want to make sure you find your probability and then use that probability and the total right here to help you calculate this answer. Keep in mind, we're talking about women as a whole value, so your final answer should not be a decimal for this number 4. And then from 5, 6, and 7, this is going to be going from percentages to some sort of value. So that is going to come from your 7.3 more specifically. So just be sure to go back and look at your notes for 7.3 to get some extra guidance on how 5, 6, and 7 will be answered. And then our last question here, question 8, wants us to recall what it means to be unusual. So you're going to use that concept that we have a reminder here about. That unusual is 2.5 or more standard deviations from the mean. Okay. So just keep those little tips in mind, and if you have any questions, be sure to reach out to your instructor.